Privacy experts say that spyware being used by the RCMP is a quantum leap forward from the wiretapping technologies that police have been using for years. This comes as an ethics committee panel continues to look into the RCMP's use of spyware in 32 investigations in the last 5 years. The director of the University of Toronto's Citizen Lab, Ron Dybert, says someone using spyware can access messages and photos, track locations, and even record live audio and video through the device. Experts are urging MPs in the House of Commons Committee to put in place better controls to protect the Canadian public. Well, joining us today to unpack this is Dr. Brenda McPhail, Director of the Privacy, Technology and Surveillance Program at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Dr. McPhail, thank you again for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, we know you appeared in front of the committee currently examining the RCMP's use of spyware. So what have you been learning from the hearing so far?
Well, we've heard the RCMP confirm that they have been using what they're calling on-device investigative tools, what most of the rest of the world calls spyware, for a long time. There's actually a bit of interesting fuzziness around that date. One RCMP witness gave a date as far back as 2002, although we know that the current program has been active since 2017.
That's really interesting. Now, what do we know so far about the type of technology currently being used by the RCMP in terms of spyware and what it's capable of?
Well, I think Professor Diebert's characterization of the tool as wiretap on steroids is really accurate. This type of tool allows a covert user to take control of all of the functions of a device that you own. So a cell phone or a computer. It lets them see everything you do in the present. It lets them look back through everything you've done in the past on the device. It can activate the camera. It can activate the microphone. They call that hot mic. It can listen in on calls. It can read texts and emails. It can even go out into cloud storage and see information that's not stored on the device itself. So essentially, it takes advantage of flaws in the operating system of your devices to hack into the flow of information that we all create minute by minute as we interact with our devices.
Some serious privacy concerns around that, Doctor. Now, we know your organization is calling for an immediate moratorium on spyware used to collect personal information remotely. So tell us a little bit about this push and what's at risk here in terms of public safety.
Well, really fundamentally, what's at risk is public trust in the RCMP. This is a big deal, the fact that this controversial technology has been used secretly for a long time. And it's important to note that this is the third reveal of this nature where we found out from the press that police are using surveillance tools that are controversial without debate and without appropriate accountability or public transparency. So in terms of public safety, the argument, of course, is these tools are helping police do investigations that they couldn't do without their use. But in terms of people feeling safe and assured that their law enforcement bodies are taking their rights seriously, what we're really missing is public accountability and a thorough public explanation of why these tools are needed, whether every other option has been exhausted before they're put into place, and the genuine analysis about whether or not the benefits to public safety are proportionate to the risks more broadly.
And if the RCMP were to have access to such technology, you say there needs to be a system that needs to be put in place in terms of accountability and transparency. So what would this sort of system look like?
We need to get rid of this culture of secrecy that seems to surround our law enforcement bodies. It's reasonable to protect investigations and the tools that are needed to do investigations carefully and well. It's not reasonable to hide the use of categories of technologies that require public debate to ensure that they're in keeping with Canadian values. So we need better privacy laws that mandate privacy impact assessments for police when they're going to use an invasive new technology. That would mean they'd have to show justification to the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, who's well equipped to confidentially review that information and assess whether or not police are taking the right steps to protect people's privacy when using the tools. We need to get rid of or narrow law enforcement exemptions in our Access to Information Act that prevent us from finding out about these tools. We need to take a look at the part of the criminal code that tells police what they have to do to get a warrant in order to use these tools, to make sure that it's up to date and modern and fit for purpose, given the nature of these new technologies. And we need to think about doing, as our allies in the US have done, creating an entity list of banned spyware vendors, because one of the reasons civil society actors like myself get so worked up about the use of these tools is that in other places, authoritarian governments are using these to spy on human rights defenders. They're using them to quench political protest. They're using them to put people in, bad positions, up to and including enticing them into situations where they've been killed, in the case of Jamal Khashoggi. So these are dangerous tools on an international stage, and we need to make sure that our governments aren't supporting rogue mercenary spyware companies that are facilitating those kinds of abuses abroad.
It's clear that a lot of concerns and issues need to be addressed in this situation. We have a lot to keep our eyes on. Dr. McPhail, thank you again for your time today.
Thank you so much.